A question for you guys. What aspect of the business do you think is most promising going forward? Like, where do you think your returns are going to come from?
I think it's obviously the main part of their business is e-commerce, and you've
Right.
got Taobao and Tmall being the main businesses kind of within that, and you've got other sort of segments like AliExpress, which I've bought like rip-off GoPro parts on from New Zealand before, so that's sort of
Right.
like the international arm, or one of them at least. So yeah, as of today, like e-commerce accounts for most of the revenue.
It's about 80 or 85%, roughly, off the top of my head,
Something
for
like that,
commerce.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot anyway. And I guess like I did a video a couple of weeks ago on how big I thought that particular segment of Alibaba could get. So Alibaba had an investor day in 2020 where they basically went through some of the targets they have in mind for over the next 10 or 15 years in terms of like I think what they call monthly active users, and they didn't necessarily talk about the average spend they want to achieve 10 or so years out, but they talked about the typical experience of a consumer that starts using one of the Alibaba platforms, and the spending goes up something like 4 or 5x in the first 5 years of that customer coming on. So I was sort of trying to do some projections and figure out how big I thought that e-commerce business could get. And I was landing on that business growing anywhere from like 8 to 14, 15% a year, maybe. That's a bit of a wide compounded sort of bracket over a long period of time, but that's kind of roughly where I landed on. But then you've also got this cloud business, which is a small segment of their revenue at the moment, but it's growing like 50% a year or something, and it's kind of only just getting to profitability. So the growth rates that I sort of came to on the e-commerce business, I think are like a base case for me personally. And then I think you potentially get a lot more growth from cloud and financial and so on as well. But yeah, interested to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole thing as well.
They
I
wanted to double their user base, right, by 2036. It was 2 billion. That's the projection. That's the assumption, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was 2036 or 2034, but somewhere in that range. Yeah, they basically want to go from 1 billion, which is where they're currently at. I think it's very roughly 800 million users in China, 200 million internationally, and yeah, they want to double that by somewhere in the mid 2030s. So if you get a double from the active users and you get, I don't know, a 3 or 4 or 5x, it's kind of how long's a piece of string in terms of what the average spend does. That turns into some pretty healthy growth rates over a decade.
Yeah, that's one thing that really appeals to me because it seems like it's really hard to lose money here. Like, if you just focus on the e-commerce business, forget about everything else, you're still probably going to see a good increase in the business. I'm saying the underlying value of the business. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like your backbone is going to be e-commerce, and if anything else takes off, then that's kind of a bonus. But e-commerce is really going to remain your bread and butter, I imagine.